What is wrong with today's increasingly popular happiness movement?
So I talk about this happiness movement a bit in Emotional Agility. So firstly, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-happiness. I'm a happy person, I enjoy being happy, and I actually at one point in my career not so long ago wrote or edited an 80-chapter book called The Oxford Handbook of Happiness. I'm very interested in the idea of happiness. However, what very often starts to happen in this culture of we should all be happy all the time is a couple of things. The first, I think that what it does at some level is it transfers all of the responsibility onto the individual. So one of the chapters in this handbook that I found just incredibly interesting was how when an individual is living maybe in a rural community and struggles to then get a job in that community, so is forced to get a job in an urban environment, but that environment is not served by public transport. So what you've got here is an individual who might be commuting for 2 or 4 hours every day, and we know that over time that impacts on their happiness. Now, to simply be saying, well, you just need to think your way out of this difficulty and it's all your fault that you're not happy enough because you aren't being positive or you aren't choosing happiness, I think abrogates our responsibility as communities and as businesses and as leaders to think about how our policies impact on the wider community. And that's certainly true even within organizations, how our policies impact. So that's one example or one reason why I question this happiness movement. There are others. From a personal perspective, we know that when people become focused on happiness as a goal, I just want to be happier, paradoxically, they actually become less happy over time. What they tend to do is they then tend to push away their so-called negative emotions, struggle to learn from those, struggle to see them as beacons of something that I can use moving forward, and so land up being in a job, for example, in which they are miserable for 5 years because they've disconnected from these key aspects of messaging that are so important to us.
Wow, so in trying to be so happy, they disconnect from their own feelings and actually are more miserable than ever.
Correct, and there is a body of research that shows this. There's a body of research that is increasingly showing that happiness comes about not through trying to be happy, but rather trying to follow what is intrinsically important and meaningful to us. That's not to say you won't be happier, but the happiness comes as a byproduct rather than a goal. And one of the things that I found in my work is what happens is it can often lead people to push aside difficulty. So they say things like, I know that I'm miserable, but at least I've got a job. Or I'm just going to push this aside because I've got this project to do. Now again, not every time you feel miserable do you need to act on it. Emotions are data, not directions. But it's really important to, I think, for us as human beings, enter into a space in ourselves where we aren't jostling with whether an emotion is wrong or right, whether we should feel it or shouldn't feel it, but rather to enter into a space where we are honest and able to welcome all emotions, because there's no emotion that's good or bad. Emotions are data, not directions.